For generations, Gilligan's Island never really changed. Gilligan just kept messing up every single rescue. The skipper kept shouting, and paradise always looked exactly the same. But the actors behind those smiles could not stay frozen in time. Most of the original cast is gone now. Careers ended, lives changed, and only one original star remains with us in 2026. Let's look at the cast of Gilligan's Island, then and now. Farm. Mrs. Lovey Howell somehow made being stranded on a deserted island look like a minor delay between high society parties. Fun. Natalie Schafer was 64 when the show premiered in 1964, giving Lovey an elegance that never faded, no matter how ridiculous things got. Surrounded by bamboo huts and tropical chaos, Lovey still carries herself like dinner might be served in some grand hotel any second. That is what makes her so memorable. Schafer never plays her wealth as simple foolishness. Underneath all that, jewelry and pampered manners is real warmth, loyalty, and a maternal softness toward the other castaways. Fawn. Her marriage to Thurston Howell III became one of the show's best-running jokes, because they still acted like high society when money meant absolutely nothing. Fawn. Schafer keeps Lovey dignified, while letting all the ridiculous humor shine through. 4. Natalie Schafer passed away in 1991 at age 90. Then, long before the island, she had already built a long career in theater, movies, and television. But Lovey was the role everyone remembered. Mrs. Howell endures because Schafer made that elegance feel absolutely indestructible. Fawn. She was a woman who could lose civilization, servants, and luxury without ever doubting that her refinement was just part of who she was. 4. Professor Roy Hinckley is the guy everyone counts on when they need the impossible to somehow become possible. Russell Johnson was 40 when the show debuted in 1964. Fan. He gave the professor a steady intelligence, making him the perfect anchor against all the madness on the island. While Gilligan panics, the skipper yells, and everyone else loses their heads. Professor just analyzes the problem, building radios, power generators, and wild gadgets out of bamboo, coconuts, and whatever else is lying around. The big joke, though, is that a guy who can build anything can never quite solve the one issue that actually matters: getting them off the island. Fun. Johnson played that conflict straight, which kept the character from turning into a cartoon genius. He stayed patient, grounded, quietly kind, serving as both the island's brilliant scientist and its main emotional anchor. Fun. His real-life past as a World War II bombardier added a natural discipline to the cool composure he brought to screen. Russell Johnson passed away in 2014 at age 89. His career stretched far beyond that island, but the professor remained his ultimate television legacy. The role lives on because Johnson made crazy science feel totally believable. On this island, logic could fix almost anything, except the one problem viewers never really wanted solved. Next up, Fonus the Skipper Grumby was the booming heart of the SS Minnow, loud enough to shake trees but way too sweet to stay mad. Alan Hale Jr., 43. When the show started in 1964, giving the skipper the ultimate mix of authority and real affection. He was supposed to be the captain, the one keeping order on the island. Yet, Gilligan tested that patience daily. The yelling, the flying hat, those exhausted looks, it all became the backbone of the show's comedy. But underneath all that frustration was real love. The skipper always looked out for Gilligan, worried about everyone else, and constantly showed his temper was just loud noise, hiding a deeply kind heart. Hale's chemistry with Bob Denver turned the duo into something way bigger than captain and first mate. Felt like father and son, brothers, and old comedy partners, constantly clashing but completely inseparable. Alan Hale Jr. died in 1990 at age 68. His career spanned decades of movies and TV, but the skipper remained his defining legacy. The skipper endures because Hale made authority so lovable. A captain forever weighed down by his buddy's massive blunders, but never once willing to leave him behind. Then a gorilla showed up. one of the show's absolute strangest guests, bringing wild jungle chaos to a sitcom already packed with crazy scenarios. Janos Prohaska was 46 when he appeared in 1965, relying entirely on physical performance, no dialogue to hide behind, and no long speeches to explain why he was doing it. It was all about movement, posture, and perfect timing, making this creature feel both slightly dangerous and hilarious. Fawn. That light-hearted energy is exactly what makes the character so charming. A gorilla suit could easily just be a silly prop, but Prohaska uses his body like an instrument, bringing physical rhythm to the role. His guest spot also highlights just how flexible Gilligan's Island could really be. One week they are fighting for a rescue, the next facing a spy, and then comes an animal that wrecks the entire camp. Prohaska built a huge career doing stunts and playing creatures across classic television, loved sci-fi and adventure, but sadly, Janos Prohaska died in a 1974 plane crash at 54. That ape costume is still a prime example of old-school TV acting based on pure physical talent. Fard. The character worked because Prohaska made the suit feel totally alive and completely unpredictable. He fit right into the wacky logic of 1960s television. Then came the Russian. This spy brings some genuine Cold War tension to the beach, but the show quickly turns it into pure comedy. At 27, Richard Kiel used his towering height to bring instant visual power to 1966. Before he even opens his mouth, you completely get why the castaways are so terrified of him. Kiel's real strength as an actor is that he never has to overplay the threat. His sheer size does the heavy lifting, allowing the sitcom to easily melt that danger into hilarious absurdity. It was all about taking real-world fears and turning them into harmless fun. A Soviet spy normally means secrets and political panic. But on this island, he enters a completely different world, one where every single threat gets turned into a ridiculous joke. Kiel would later take that same towering screen presence and ride it to massive global fame. Richard Kiel died in 2014 at age 74. He found massive fame playing Jaws in the legendary James Bond movies. He created one of the most memorable movie henchmen ever, proving he could show so much character without saying a word. His early island guest spot feels like a perfect preview of that special talent. A giant who looked incredibly dangerous, but had a charm you couldn't forget. Thurston Howell III treats this deserted island like some annoying piece of real estate he hasn't hired a manager for yet. Jim Backus was 51 when the show premiered in 1964, and he turned Howell's ridiculous sense of privilege into some of the show's absolute best jokes. Fash is completely useless on a deserted beach, yet Howell acts like his wealth is still the ultimate law of nature. He talks like he is surrounded by servants, even when staring at wild bamboo, coconuts, and ruined escape plans. Backus brings just enough class to the role to keep him from looking totally foolish. Underneath all that snobbish attitude is genuine love, especially for his wife Lovey. His deep loyalty slowly turns him into a real member of the island family. The marriage of Thurston and Lovey is a hilarious look at high society trying to survive without their millions actually meaning anything. Jim Backus passed away in 1989 at 76, but his legacy started long before he ever hit the island. He was already incredibly famous as Mr. Magoo, with a massive career across Hollywood. Thurston Howell III is memorable because Backus made his privilege funny, not completely empty. He was a rich man stuck where money meant nothing, yet he remained absolutely convinced that style and charm still mattered, and that a good suit still counted for something. Then Norbert Y arrives, bringing a sharp instinct to exploit everyone else's weaknesses. Don Rickles was 40 when he appeared in 1966. His fast, aggressive comedic timing gives Y a totally different energy than the rest of the castaways. He plays a schemer who knows exactly how to weaponize people's desperate hopes. That makes him a dangerous guest. Gilligan messes up by accident, Howell through snobbery, But why does it on purpose? Fun. Rickles turns that threat into comedy by unleashing the fast-talking verbal confidence that made him famous. He talks incredibly fast, pushes boundaries, and turns manipulation into a highly entertaining art form. Suddenly, the beach becomes a stage for a sharper, more streetwise brand of humor, though still safe for the whole family. His guest spot gives the episode a massive jolt, because the castaways aren't just fighting the elements anymore. They are suddenly dealing with a shark who knows exactly how to manipulate people. Fawn Rickles passed away in 2017 at 90, leaving a legacy as one of America's greatest insult comics. He was famous for the strange affection hiding inside his sharpest lines. Norbert Y. remains a small, memorable piece of that massive legacy. Fawn, a character built on sharp timing, attitude, and turning trouble into entertainment. Marianne Summers brings something this island can never build from bamboo or coconuts: the warm feeling of home. Dawn Wells was 26 when Gilligan's Island premiered in 1964, giving Marianne the warmth that balanced out the wilder, cartoonish characters. While Ginger represents pure Hollywood glamour, Marianne brings real familiarity, kindness, hard work, and a quiet belief that people still look out for each other when everything goes completely sideways. Wells keeps her character wholesome without ever letting her feel dull. Marianne can cook, garden, joke around, and hold her own in the chaos. That gingham dress became an iconic piece of TV history. But audiences truly loved her sincerity. She felt like someone who would remember your worries, lend a hand without making a fuss, and still find reasons to smile after yet another failed rescue attempt. Her emotional steadiness gives the island a real anchor. Dawn Wells passed away in 2020 at age 82. After the show ended, she stayed active in theater, television, and public events. Always embracing the love fans poured out for Marianne. The character endures because Wells made her goodness feel real instead of fake. Today, Marianne remains one of classic television's absolute best symbols of comfort. She is the girl who carries home inside her, even when home is impossibly far away. King Kaliwani arrives with massive ceremony, authority, and the exact kind of misunderstanding that this show could stretch into an entire episode. Stanley Adams was 52 when he appeared in 1967, bringing a heavy comic presence that fit perfectly with the show's goofy adventure style. Characters like King Kaliwani belong to a classic television tradition. A new visitor arrives. The castaways totally misread the situation. Suddenly, rescue looks possible or danger seems close, turning the island into a chaotic stage for pure confusion. Adams knew the humor landed best when his character stayed dead serious. King Kaliwani's authority had to feel completely real to the people inside the episode, even if the viewers can already tell that everything is going to collapse into pure comedy. That careful balance lets the role stay colorful without dragging down the show's light tone. Guest stars like him kept life on the island completely unpredictable, always teasing the idea that something might finally rescue the castaways. Stanley Adams passed away in 1977 at age 62. His career covered film and TV, including memorable work on Star Trek. King Kaliwani is just one minor example of his range. Adams could drop into an established show, build a massive presence in seconds, vanishing but leaving behind a character who fit this bizarre, exaggerated world. Dr. Boris Balanoff looks like he broke out of a cheap science fiction flick and crashed directly into a tropical sitcom. Fato Scotti was 47 when he first showed up in 1965, giving the mad scientist a wild mix of menace and theatrical comedy. Balanoff's bizarre experiments, his hypnotic gaze, and weird antics pushed the show past normal shipwreck jokes into a funny parody of gothic science fiction. That kind of storytelling flexibility is why the series is still so memorable. You can throw spies, millionaires, gorillas, or mad scientists onto this island, and it somehow still feels like the exact same place. Vito Scotti played Balanoff with incredible kinetic energy, making him creepy enough to scare the castaways, fine, yet silly enough to fit right into the show's lighthearted universe. His performance relied on detail, sharp vocal timing, and making completely absurd ideas sound plausible. Vito Scotti died in 1996 at 78. As one of television's finest character actors, popping up in endless comedies and dramas, where he was famous for his accents, timing, and memorable guest roles. Fun. Dr. Balanoff endures because Vito Scotti made madness so entertaining, turning the entire island into a temporary laboratory, proving that the show could hijack virtually any genre, warp it into a comedy form, and still feel totally natural. That native character represents a style of mid-century television that heavily relied on generic adventure tropes. Farm. But Eddie Little Sky's presence holds a significance that goes way beyond this single episode. Fine. He was 38 when he appeared on Gilligan's Island in 1965. On screen, the role followed the usual pattern of goofy island encounters, wild misunderstandings, and broad comedy setups. But off-screen, Little Sky represented something much more vital. As an Oglala Lakota actor, he worked in an era when native performers faced harsh, limited options and were constantly forced into cheap, narrow stereotypes built by the industry. That makes this silly sitcom gig a bridge to a massive, complicated chapter in American TV history. Famin. Inside a dated cliché role, the performer brought real lived identity and immense professional dignity to a screen space. Farn. Where native actors were usually treated as nothing but faceless background extras. Eddie Little Sky died in 1997 at age 71. He worked steadily in westerns, TV, and film, shaping classic American screen history. His legacy matters because it reaches far beyond this single role. Little Sky belonged to a brave generation of native actors who fought hard to succeed inside a deeply flawed, highly imperfect system. And just by showing up, they carved out room for authentic voices to follow. That parrot might seem tiny on Gilligan's Island, but with the legendary Mel Blanc voicing it, even a bird steals the show. Fun. Mel Blanc was 56 when he did this in 1964, bringing massive radio and cartoon experience to the live-action sitcom. Parrot fits the show's comedy gears perfectly. Mimicry creates instant confusion, and confusion is what draws Gilligan's Island. 1. Repeated phrase dropped at the absolute worst second sends the whole gang running for their lives. Mel Blanc knew how to inject real personality, rhythm, and clear intent into a creature that was not even human. Fawn. That genius alone gives this random bird way more life than the script ever demanded. It also bridges this goofy sitcom to the massive entertainment traditions of its era. Think classic animation, quick radio wit, vaudeville timing, and the pure magic of creating a character with sound alone. Mel Blanc passed away in 1989 at 81, leaving behind a truly staggering legacy. He built it voicing legends like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Porky Pig. This tiny parrot is just a footnote next to those giants. Still, you can hear the brilliant craft a guy who could make literally any sound feel completely alive. On this island, even a stray bird became a comedy engine, especially when powered by one of history's greatest vocal talents, Farn. The headhunter belongs to that exaggerated adventure side of Gilligan's Island, where threats are just real enough to terrify the castaways, yet silly enough to keep the audience laughing. Russ Grieve was 42 when he guest starred in 1965, and he brought enough raw physical muscle to make the threat feel real. Still, he kept things beautifully locked into that classic sitcom rhythm. Things couldn't get too dark. The danger had to melt into the usual cycle of panic, silly disguises, and the slapstick survival that made the show a hit. He commands attention. Grieve's imposing presence makes the character work right away. Viewers instantly get the threat before the comedy starts softening it up. That balance was crucial because the show constantly borrowed wild adventure tropes, while refusing to ever let things get truly scary. Everything had to slide back to safety before the credits rolled. Russ Grieve died in 1980. He was 56. Fun. He worked steadily in TV and movies as a character actor, commanding the screen even when he only had a few minutes of airtime. Fort. Hunter remains a staple of the show's colorful guests, reflecting a style of old-school TV storytelling, was totally of its time, broad, exaggerated, and built to turn scary situations into family-friendly laughs. Fuck. Wrong Way Feldman shows up with exactly what the castaways desperately want, a real chance. Someone might finally know the way home. Fawn. Hans Conried was 47 when he guest-starred in 1964, turning this eccentric pilot into a truly unforgettable character. Feldman is a World War I pilot who somehow got stranded himself, making him feel like a lost legend who stumbled into the wrong sitcom. Comedy comes from hope crashing into total unreliability. The castaways see rescue, but the audience sees another beautifully doomed disaster. Conried gives Wrong Way this theatrical grandeur, making him sound experienced and totally sincere, even when his terrible sense of direction guarantees absolute disaster. There is sadness here, a faint grief beneath the joke. Every new visitor reminds them the outside world is still out there, and every failure makes this island feel a little more permanent. Hans Conried passed away in 1982 at the age of 64. His career stretched across film, television, radio, and voice acting, including his famous turn as Captain Hook in Disney's Peter Pan. Wrong Way Feldman endures because Conried made failure sound magnificent, for he is a comic symbol of hope, just pointed in the absolute wrong direction. Fawn, a man who could fly anywhere, apparently, except toward the place everyone desperately wanted to reach. Thorn. Duke Williams arrives like a visitor from an entirely different fantasy. Athletic, handsome, relaxed, carrying the sunlit confidence of a beach movie hero. Denny Miller was 31 when he appeared in 1965, and his presence briefly changes the island's emotional temperature. Duke looks like someone who might actually be able to do what the castaways cannot: cross the ocean and reconnect them with civilization. That possibility creates excitement immediately. The women notice him. The men measure themselves against him, and the entire group begins imagining that perhaps this stranger finally become the answer. Gilligan's Island never lets hope stay simple. Rescue is always so close, and yet so far. He plays Duke with easy confidence, keeping him likable and fun instead of arrogant. Farm. He brought exciting possibilities without breaking the show's comic balance. Denny Miller passed away in 2014 at the age of 80. He starred as Tarzan, the Ape Man, and made countless appearances across television and film. Fort. Duke Williams remains part of the island's long tradition of almost rescues. Foreign. He represents that moment when the castaways can suddenly see home, only for the show to gently close the door again, preserving paradise, frustration, and another week of comedy. Fort Ginger Grant somehow makes a deserted island look like a Hollywood set. Tina Louise was 30 when Gilligan's Island premiered in 1964, bringing an instant, iconic glamour. Fat. The character works because she is more than looks. Ginger is theatrical, flirtatious, clever, and surprisingly adaptable. When the castaways need a disguise, a performance, or some emotional manipulation, Ginger knows how to turn show business into survival. Louise gives her enough warmth to keep that glamour from feeling distant. She can be vain and dramatic, but she's also kind, perceptive, and deeply loyal to the group. In a series built on tropes, Ginger represents the fantasy. Fan. Hollywood elegance dropped where there are no cameras, no red carpets, and no audience besides those stranded with her. In 2026, Tina Louise is 92 and remains the last surviving original cast member. Fawn. She continued working in film and television for years, even as she tried to put some distance between herself and the famous character. But that distance only freezes Ginger's iconic image in time. The character endures because Louise made glamour feel strangely durable, a movie star with no studio, no red carpet, and no reason to perform, yet somehow still carrying the spotlight with her. Gilligan is the reason they almost escape, and the reason they never actually do. Bob Denver was 29 when the show premiered, 1964, turning the accident-prone first mate into an icon. Gilligan ruins plans, misinterprets orders, and trips over his own feet. He seems almost supernaturally capable of causing total disaster at the exact wrong moment. 4. But Denver makes sure the character never gets annoying. Gilligan is totally innocent. He never sabotages things out of selfishness. He just tries too hard to help, making every disaster strangely forgivable. The red shirt, white cap, nervous expressions, and pure childlike reactions created a character that audiences loved instantly. His bond with the skipper is the show's emotional core. No matter how much trouble Gilligan makes, the love survives. For this, Denver found success on the many loves of Dobie Gillis. But the island changed his life forever. Bob Denver passed away in 2005 at 70, leaving behind a character that became a permanent part of television history. Character endures because Denver made failure lovable. A man who can ruin the rescue, apologize sincerely, and somehow make everyone forgive him before the next disaster strikes. The SS Minnow never actually made it back to port, but somehow these 7 stranded souls found a permanent home in our hearts. Most of those voices are gone now, yet the island still waits, exactly where we left it, warm, wild, and untouched by time. Thanks for remembering them with us. Stick with Rewind 1960s for more classic stars, forgotten stories, and TV memories that never truly fade away.